What if I told you that your insecurity wasn't born with you, but was manufactured? Are we really free? Or are we conditioned to feel inadequate from the moment we begin to understand the world? Who benefits from you feeling insufficient? In this video, we'll analyze how capitalism feeds your insecurity from birth. We'll examine philosophical arguments from both sides, compare thinkers who defend and criticize the system, and understand the psychological and social mechanisms behind it. If you want a clear and direct analysis, stay until the end. And if you find it relevant, leave your like and subscribe to the channel. Let's begin. There's an observable pattern in contemporary society. People feel they're never enough. No matter how much they achieve, there's always a next goal. No matter how much they have, something's always missing. No matter how they are, there's always a better version to reach. This chronic dissatisfaction isn't accidental. It has structural causes. Capitalism, as an economic system, functions through consumption. And consumption depends on a basic premise. You need to want something you don't have yet. But there's an important philosophical debate here. Some thinkers argue the system artificially creates this dissatisfaction. Others defend that it's simply part of human nature, and capitalism merely responds to it. Let's investigate both sides. Marx developed the concept of alienation to explain how the worker disconnects from the product of their work. They don't see themselves in what they produce, their identity fragments. They become just a function within a larger system. When your identity isn't consolidated, you seek external validation. And that's where insecurity enters. Jung observed a similar phenomenon in psychology. When we lose contact with the self, our deep center, we become vulnerable to collective pressures. Capitalism doesn't invent insecurity, but exploits an existing psychological fragility. Nietzsche criticized the creation of herd man, people who abandon their individuality to conform to external standards. Consumerism is exactly that, seeking identity through objects and status symbols. But let's look at the other side. Adam Smith argued that capitalism reflects the cooperative nature of human beings. The free market allows voluntary exchanges that benefit both parties. Dissatisfaction isn't manufactured. It's the natural engine of ambition. Hayek defended that individual freedom is the most important value. If you consume, it's because you choose to. If you compete, it's because you see advantage in it. Nobody forces you. Steven Pinker presents data showing that human progress is real. We live longer, with more resources, more freedom, and more opportunities than any other time in history. So which perspective is correct? Observe a small child. They have no notion of not being enough. They simply exist. But when they enter school, something changes. They discover there are rankings. The best students, the most popular, those who have better things. They learn that everything is compared. Grades, clothes, toys, appearance, performance. And gradually, they internalize a belief. To be accepted, they need to prove their worth. This intensifies in adolescence with social media. Each post is measured in likes. Each photo is compared with others. Other people's lives seem better, more interesting, more complete. In adult life, the pattern continues. Salary, position, house, car, relationship, body. Everything is ranked. Everything has a better version you should reach. You work, achieve, upgrade. But the feeling of sufficiency never arrives, because the finish line always moves. This pattern is observable and documented. The question is it inevitable or constructed? To understand how capitalism shapes modern insecurity, we need to go back in time. Before the Industrial Revolution in the 18th century, most people lived in agricultural communities. Their identity was tied to the land, the family, the trade they learned from their parents. You were the blacksmith's son, the farmer's grandson. Your social position was relatively fixed. Were there problems? Of course. But there was also something we've lost today: identity stability. With the Industrial Revolution, everything changed. People were pulled from rural communities and thrown into urban factories. Marx observed this firsthand. Workers spending 14 hours a day producing parts they'd never see assembled. They were no longer artisans. They were cogs. And here begins systematic alienation. You don't recognize yourself in what you produce. Your value is measured only by your capacity to generate profit. Your identity fragments. In the early 20th century, something new emerged: modern advertising. Edward Bernays, Freud's nephew, revolutionized propaganda by applying psychoanalytic concepts. He realized it wasn't enough to sell products based on utility. You had to sell through emotion, status, the promise of transformation. In 1929, Bernays convinced women to smoke cigarettes by calling them torches of freedom. It wasn't about tobacco. It was about identity, rebellion, emancipation. From then on, consumption stopped being about necessity and became about who you are, or who you want to appear to be. Decades later, in the 1950s and 60s, mass consumer society emerged. Television in every home, advertising 24/7. The middle class grows, and with it, competition for status. You don't just buy a house, you buy a house better than your neighbors. You don't just buy a car, you buy a car that says something about you. Baudrillard analyzed this in the 1970s. We live in a society of signs. Objects don't have value in themselves. They signify something. And what they signify is always relative, always comparative. In the 1980s and 90s, neoliberalism intensifies everything. Competition leaves companies and enters people. You're no longer just a worker, you're a personal brand. You need to sell yourself, promote yourself, optimize yourself. Byung-Chul Han calls this self-exploitation. You become both boss and employee of yourself, and you can't complain because you're free. Then come the 2000s and social media. Now comparison is instant, global, and infinite. You don't just compare yourself with your neighbor. You compare yourself with millions of people, all the time, in every aspect of life. Each photo you post is judged. Each achievement is measured. Each moment of your life needs to be worthy of sharing, or you become irrelevant. And here's the crucial point. In just 250 years, we went from stable communities with fixed identities to a society where your identity is fluid, performative, and constantly evaluated. Capitalism didn't create human insecurity, but it transformed insecurity into fuel. It built an entire system that functions better the more dissatisfied you are. And the most efficient part, it convinced you that this dissatisfaction is your fault, not the system's. For years you operate within this system without questioning it. You believe the problem is you, that if you tried harder, you'd finally get there. You consume products that promise completeness, seek achievements that should bring satisfaction, follow formulas that supposedly lead to success, but the dissatisfaction remains. Let's see how this works in practice. You buy new clothes because you believe you'll feel more confident. It works for a few days. Then you see someone with something better, and the feeling of insufficiency returns. You get a promotion at work. Finally recognition, right? But within weeks, you're already looking at the next position up. The satisfaction lasted less than you expected. You change your body at the gym, lose weight, gain muscle, post a photo and receive validation. But soon you realize you need to maintain it, improve more, can't relax. The achievement transforms into a new prison. You buy a better car, a bigger house, brand name clothes. Each achievement should be the end point, but it never is. There's always a next level, and worse, you blame yourself for it. If I were more disciplined, more focused, stronger, I'd be satisfied. But it's not about you. It's about how the system was designed. Baudrillard explained this through the concept of simulacra. The satisfaction you seek doesn't exist as a real destination. It's a mirage that moves as you approach it. The product never delivers what the advertising promised. Because what advertising sells isn't the product. It's the idea of who you'll be when you have that product. And that person never arrives. Because they don't exist. You're not buying sneakers. You're buying the illusion of becoming someone who wears those sneakers. Someone successful, admired, confident. But when the sneakers arrive, you're still you. With the same insecurities. Just now, with new sneakers. Byung-Chul Han describes this mechanism as the burnout society. You're no longer exploited by a boss forcing you to work. You exploit yourself voluntarily. You wake up early to train. Work late to grow in your career. Take care of your diet, appearance, productivity. Optimize every area of life, and you think you're being free, that you're in control. But you're just following the script that was written for you. Be productive, be efficient, be more. Freedom that requires constant performance isn't freedom. It's an invisible cage. At some point, a rupture may happen. Sometimes it's a crisis. You work years toward a goal, achieve it, and realize nothing changed inside. Sometimes it's burnout. You simply can't keep chasing anymore. The body gives up before the mind. Sometimes it's just a moment of clarity. You're scrolling through social media, seeing perfect lives, and suddenly think, why do I care about this? And in that moment, you realize something fundamental. Everyone around you feels the same. That person who seems to have it all together. Also insecure. That profile that seems perfect. Also trying to fill a void. That colleague who always achieves more. Also never feels enough. It's not you. It's the system. The race has no finish line. The promise of future satisfaction is always postponed, because the system doesn't work if you stop seeking. And when you see this, really see it, something changes. The question stops being, what's wrong with me? And becomes, what's wrong with this game? The first change happens when you stop constantly absorbing external stimuli and create space to observe your own thoughts. Schopenhauer already pointed out that it's in solitude that you stop being a reflection of others and begin to identify what you really think and feel. Jung called this process individuation, discovering who you actually are instead of who you were told you should be. Another important step is actively questioning what you consume, not just products, but ideas, content, comparisons. You can consciously choose to stop feeding narratives that make you feel inadequate. Epicurus taught this over 2,000 years ago. Natural desires are simple and limited. Most of what you think you need was learned. It's not innate. Recognizing you've been conditioned isn't victimizing yourself. It's simply understanding the mechanism. And when you understand the mechanism, you can decide what to do with it. When you change individually, it has collective consequences. If you stop seeking validation through consumption, you stop feeding the system with your anxiety. You consume less compulsively, compete less uselessly. Capitalism depends on collective participation in the narrative. It needs the majority to believe they need more, that they're not enough, that they must constantly prove their worth. When a significant number of people question this, the dynamic changes. Bauman described liquid modernity. Everything is fluid, temporary, disposable, including identities. But when you establish a solid internal foundation, you're no longer dragged by the current. This isn't isolation or total rejection of the system. It's simply operating with consciousness instead of automatism. Here's the central point. Capitalism doesn't invent human insecurity. It takes something that already exists, the desire to belong, to be valued, to have meaning, and transforms it into an operating mechanism. It systematizes fear. From childhood, you receive an implicit message. You need to deserve your existence. You need to prove you're worth it. You need to earn your place. And then you spend decades trying to fill a void that was constructed, not discovered. Jung wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Your insecurity isn't fate. It's the result of systematic conditioning. When you see this clearly, the question changes. It's no longer, how do I become enough? But rather, why did I believe I wasn't? And the answer is objective, because there's a system that functions better when you feel incomplete. If the system profits from your dissatisfaction, why would it allow you to feel satisfied? It's not about completely rejecting the system. It's about understanding how it functions within your mind. Real change begins when you identify who benefits from your fears and insecurities. When you stop outsourcing your evaluation of worth and take responsibility for your own narrative. The solution isn't in more external achievements. It's in recognizing that the premise was wrong from the start. You don't need to become enough. You already are. Always were. The game was rigged. This isn't empty optimism. It's clear observation of the structure. And when you see the structure, you can consciously decide how much you want to participate in it. If this video made you think differently, leave your like. If you want more analyses like this, subscribe to the channel and comment. Can you identify when you're acting by real choice or by conditioning? Until the next video, think for yourself.